3.
All right. Mhm.
There we go. Countdown, and then it explodes.
And action.
All right, action. Well, happy Campfire, everybody. Good to have you. Glad you're here. We're gonna keep moving on our conversation around the sort of central topic of presence that I've kind of been working through with you guys. First, we'll do some brief intros, and then we'll rock and roll. I think some of you were here last week, some of you were here the week before. So, we got a smaller group today, which is great, but maybe like 45-second, a minute kind of intros. Tell us about yourself. Tell us either about like the challenges or the things that you're working on currently. And then we'll dive in.
Hello, everyone. I'm Adam. I think I recognize everyone on this call, so that's good. So I feel like I'm second round at least for everyone here. I'm a father of two. I'm a software engineer by trade, and recently got divorced, and I'm just kind of learning to live on my own on the days when I don't have my children, and this group has been a blessing in my life to have the space to share some of the things I've been going through. And I think it was Scott that said something a couple weeks ago about life is about dancing through the raindrops, and that really stuck in my head. I think it was you, Scott, but yeah, having a pretty good week, and I look forward to sharing more stuff with you all this week.
Good to have you, Adam.
Scott McAdams. Missed last week. Been here a couple of times. Um, I'm been in the business world for about 40 years now. Husband, father of three, grandfather. Both have both of my parents actually was down visiting my parents this last week. My dad's health is deteriorating, so we were transitioning him into more assistance in the facility he's in. I actually got hospice care kind of engaged as well. So that's something we're kind of navigating right now. Just something new, and trying to be there, but also manage other responsibilities as well. So
Sorry to hear about the hospice, Scott.
yeah, thanks, Matt.
Welcome. Well, glad you're back. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Liz. I think I recognize everyone besides maybe Chris. I don't know if we've crossed paths yet, but I am a wife, a mom of two very active boys. I've worked in corporate America as in project and account management for the last 16 plus years. And I'm looking to do a transition out and working through a transition into a very different field of design, interior design, and just going through what that looks like for me.
Glad you're here, Liz.
Yeah, Christopher Freeman. My wife and I have a business together, coaching therapy. She's the therapist, I'm the coach. Musician by trade. We're talking about family stuff. I've got two grown kids in their 20s, and they both ride motorcycles, and it stresses me the fuck out. And have a dog I'm obsessed with. And then, let's see here. Yeah, and I think that the thing I'm really trying to focus on right now is some music stuff. I mean, the coaching stuff as well, but I've been hacking away at the Indian sitar for 20-ish years, and so I'm trying to do a project, re-engage a project, and get out and play more, and all the stuff that goes along with that. So
Good to see you, bud. Glad you're here. Alexander, do you want to do a quick intro?
I gue- yeah, I guess that's me. I'm Alexander Barillo. I work at Evolving Lives with Matt. No marriage, no kids, and I'm currently working on marketing, how to grow my piece of the business, figuring out where I fit in the industry. Happy to be here.
Hi, everybody. I'm Matt. I'm glad you're here. I am building a campfire. I have been working on revamping my offerings in a way that allows me to impact more people and reallocate my time so that I have more time to work on some of the bigger picture projects, and I'm not just spending my day to day exclusively with people. So what I'm doing is I'm retooling some things, doing more groups, targeting different, some new different client sources. But again, my goal here with the Campfire is to light a beacon for leaders that are working on things, maybe challenged, call it stress, call it anxiety, call it overwhelm, call it whatever you want. We're working through these things together. And I'm glad you're here. So we've been talking through presence. We've been talking through awareness. And then last time we were talking about emotional digestion. So in that bucket, for me, there is, another key thing that I always talk about when I talk about presence. We talked about awareness, which is, our understanding of a situation. And we talked about that process where I see things, then I interpret those things, and I do something about those things, and how core and central being able to audit that interpretation is. One of the other things that comes with this conversation around awareness is a word that I think sounds similar, but is different, which is focus. When we talk about perhaps like my focus, my attention, my concentration, right? And so this is not what do I think about an experience or something, but how am I directing where I'm putting my attention and my energy, right? Am I looking at the black dog, or am I looking somewhere else completely? Because if I don't even look at the black dog, if I don't even see it, well, there's no interpretation in the first place. So, and this certainly has to do with where do we put our focus and attention at work? Where do we put our focus and attention at home? But what's very clear to me over the years is that this really first decision defines everything downstream. So, which is to say, I kind of said again, I can have a stressful situation at work. Say I have 3 different problems that I need to solve. And let's say they're all challenging, right? Depending on which problem I'm putting my energy and attention, we start asking questions like, how productive is this? Which would be like, how easily is this helping me to reach the goal, right? Does it make more sense for me to start on project 1, 2, or 3 based on a deadline, based on my skill set, based on, the importance of this project, right? And the same is true at home. We only have so much time and energy. Which relationships are we going to focus on? I see a lot of people, spend a lot of time managing and focusing on, dysfunctional or even destructive relationships where, meanwhile, that energy could maybe go in a different direction. Maybe that energy could go towards, a more meaningful, productive relationship that would return them more energy over time. So the reason I have this discussion after I have the discussion on interpretation is now that you're equipped with the idea of like, oh yeah, how am I, interpreting or qualifying these events? That then leads us into, okay, based on that, right, am I correctly deciding what to focus on or not? Or do I keep finding myself focusing on things that are repeating negative patterns, that are repeating negative outcomes, that are creating emotional distress? And the answer often is yes, I do. So how can we notice maybe this week where we're placing our focus that may be unproductive, which isn't as bad, or counterproductive, right? Where are the places that are netting us negative rather than positive returns? What are the places that we focus on that do net us positive returns, that because these other things are screaming in our face, we're not allowing ourselves to be drawn to? And how can we realign our focus towards the things that feel easier, more productive, more beneficial? And I often use the metaphor, I describe it like playing a game of Jenga. where I start to poke and see where those little things, little pieces of wood will move. And I can choose to keep poking at the thing that's won't move and is really hard, and then eventually I keep poking and the whole tower crumbles, or I can find the places where I poke and things move through more easily, and that's how we advance the game, right? So that's kind of how I think about focus. So as we step up to the hot seat today, and the good news is, 4 people seems like everybody's gonna get a little time. So if there's a challenge that you had specifically coming in, happy to work through that. If there was something that you really were, struck by through the presence conversation, of course, feel free to go in that direction. And we'll open up the floor. Who'd like to take the hot seat first today? Who's got something they're working through? And again, bonus points if it has to do with focus.
I'll hop right in, Matt.
Yeah.
And I honestly, I think what I've been kind of noticing does tie into the presence, the emotional awareness, the focus. You know, some of the things that I'm experiencing kind of with my dad and then with my family, this health and ongoing decline and potential loss. I have not been through something like that with close family member or parent, and I find myself kind of pulling kind of experiences that other family members. My wife lost both of her parents. I have friends who've lost their parents, and other types of loss. Just trying to discern, what are my real feelings and what are feelings that I'm kind of borrowing from other experiences, right? It's like, well, I'm supposed to feel this way. It's like, well, maybe I'm not feeling that way. It's just this pattern of, trying to kind of find the right way, things to do and to think and to say, as opposed to just letting myself kind of really feel and respond in a true way, not necessarily in a way that I have heard is appropriate or in a way that somebody else has responded in similar situations.
Yeah. Yeah. Any thoughts, feelings, or feedback for Scott?
Just sorry you're going through that, Scott, and
Thank you.
it's I what you said really resonates with me. Am I feeling the way I'm supposed to feel about the thing that's happening to me right now? Always that inner voice. Like, am I not a good person because I don't feel the way that the movie told me I was supposed to feel about so, and I know I've gotten better at like just observing those thoughts and being like and trusting that you're feeling exactly how you're supposed to feel, right? I mean, and I think on one of these calls I talked about my getting through the chaos, getting through the operational situation, like, comes first. Like, got to get dad in hospice, got to make sure he's cared for. Like, don't really do the feeling stuff, and then the grief and the feelings happen months, weeks, years down the road. So, yeah, I'm always grateful for people's experiences and what their experience was for going through the similar life thing. But of course, it doesn't mean that's what it needs to feel like for you, because it's going to feel exactly as it should for you, exactly how it's supposed to.
Yeah, thank you, and I appreciate that. It seems, and maybe it's just kind of some of the patterns in the way I work through things. It's trying to kind of get through something and maybe pull this, pull that, pull this, pull that, as opposed to just taking some time and really feeling what I feel. It kind of expedites kind of the process of moving through. So yeah, if that makes sense, just taking a little more time and taking the breath.
I think I want to get everybody else's feedback, but it's probably some of both, right? It's probably, yes, I feel differently about this than maybe somebody else I'm comparing myself to. And, yeah, I'm like you said, Adam, and you said, Scott, like, yeah, we're doing the thing. We're trying to solve the thing. We're handling all of the stuff, and we may not have slowed down enough to feel it. And, yeah, the hope is that, like, we've learned enough of this that it's like, yeah, I can wait and it'll crash, or I can sit down and I can do a little of it. But either way, like, it's not like necessarily right or wrong, right? Like, it's not wrong to just like, yeah, I got to handle it now and there may be a crash later, right? Like, it's not wrong that, some of the stuff you were sharing last time, Adam, like, it didn't hit you until you got to a certain phase in that journey, right? Like, that's not, we don't want to turn emotional processing into just another thing we can shame ourselves for. Like, oh, if I would have sat down for an extra meditation, then, blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, you don't know. You're going through experience that for you is unique in the first time. And, yeah, I think, again, just some of both, probably, right? Anybody else have feedback for Scott?
Yeah, just echoing kind of what you just said, Matt, is like, I don't think there's a right timeline or a right way to do any of it, but like my experience, and I haven't lost my parents, but losing, just, I was very close to my grandparents, and losing them, I always thought that, I mean, I actually didn't grieve for probably like 10 years after that loss, because to me, there was a belief that, I like, I should lose my grandparents. I should lose my parents. Like, I should be celebrating their life. I should be okay with this loss. So I think yeah, I wish I would have given myself a little bit of space earlier on, rather than holding that for so long. But yeah, I think it's just, everyone does it so differently, and everyone's feelings are so different. But yeah, I can imagine how hard this is going through it with the parents. I'm really sorry.
Thanks, Liz.
Chris's mouth is moving, but he's not here.
Am I not?
Now we
Muted
can
you.
hear you.
Oh Lord, Scott, I'm sorry you're going through that. I'm a little older, and my parents are old, and I wonder about some of that stuff with their health. But Matt, you'd mentioned not shaming yourself with like emotional processing, and I won't name drop, but a friend who's a pretty successful musician who has struggled with drugs forever, right? And OD'd a couple months ago, and that sucked. But but I was also relieved, right? And it was hard to be honest with that emotion, because I love the guy, but it was so exhausting having him in my life, and so that idea of honestly sitting with what you're feeling and kind of reflecting on that, I was able to get to some good spaces, but it was like, rather than like crying or whatever, I was just like, oh, it was just this weird exhale. And I know I'm just being transparent. That was, after like 20 years of this guy almost dying literally for 20 years, So yeah.
I think it's, obviously, sorry for the challenge, but I think that, like, what you're saying is such a good example of, it's so easy to, like, end up having this secondary emotion on top where I'm feeling what I'm feeling, and now I'm ashamed of what I'm feeling, right? Like, I'm experiencing relief, right?
Yeah.
I mean, number one, and Alexander can speak to this because we both do a lot of grief work, right? Like, relief is actually a very normal part of grief. It's not, whether it's a, sudden thing or expected thing, or, all those different things. Like, that's part of the whole process of grief, is that relief is part of that process. We're trying to let go, we're trying to open, we're trying to allow, we're trying to, and so you can pick any sort of transition, right? Like, maybe I lost a job or a relationship or, a person, right? Like, sooner or later, the whole point of that process is relief, right? But then there's this other thing that's like, I'm supposed to feel bad. And then there's this other thing that's like, I don't want to feel bad. And so that it all mixes together, right? Who wants to feel bad? Like, oh, the grief is supposed to feel bad, but nobody, of course, wants to feel bad. So, I often talk about confusion as an emotion, not an absence of intellectual information, but rather conflicting emotions going on at the same time. I'm confused because I feel both loss and relief, right? I'm confused because I'm feeling this, but I think I should be feeling this, and there's judgment there, right? And so that confusion is not necessarily anything that any sort of like tangible information is going to handle. That confusion is just very much like, yeah, I need to sit in the confusion feeling so that it can maybe reconcile a bit into these different chunks that then my brain and my body will help me to process through. Confusion can often be a place where people get stuck because they keep trying to solve it rather than allow the contradictory feelings to be expressed and experienced together. Yeah. So Scott, what do you, in all of that, like, have you identified, like, what do you need for yourself right now as you're beginning to move into this season of, this experience?
And I think just moving into that, understanding that, my dad's 93, right? And he's had a great life. It should be looking at the celebration of his life. I get pulled back into sometimes some of the maybe the issues or unresolved things that I had with my dad, right? That starts to cut. So then it becomes more about me, and it shouldn't be about me, right? So, trying to kind of let that go. There may be some time to deal with that another day, but just really focusing on him, my brothers and sisters, my mom, everybody else is trying to go through, and then kind of sit with what all that is and how that feels. So,
Yeah. 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 So it sounds like taking a little time. It sounds like you know what you need to do to kind of begin to sort through pieces of it. But yeah, it sounds like also, maybe you've been able to, anticipate, some level of where things were headed and where things are coming. And it feels a little, it feels digestible, perhaps, right? There's a sense that, yeah, that's great.
yeah, thank you.
For what it's worth, Scott, and I don't say this to sound like I'm giving advice. I'll just say, like, often I've like Matt said, I do grief work, and I have clients who are grieving, and I've had similar conversations with them, and they've, I've heard people say things like, "Oh, it should be about the person, either because they are in the process of dying or it's their anniversary." And what I usually end up telling them is the process of them dying and the fact that they're gone, yeah, that's about them. But the grief is about you. It's your grief. It's your emotions. You're allowed to have them. And so if that means processing a whole bunch of unprocessed stuff, go ahead. It's your brain. It's your emotions. I mean, you can wait till, later down the line to do it. I do it on your timeline. But it's okay to take ownership of the grief. It doesn't have to belong to your dad.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you on that.
Love that. Thanks, Alexander. Well, thanks for kicking us off, Scott. We can always go back if we need to, but now, who's up next and who has something else that they're working through?
Ooh, me.
Yeah, go ahead. Take it away.
Is my audio and video okay? It's a little wonky on my end, so I apologize.
I think you're perfect.
So quick update. I shared with the group just feeling some anxiety with being my nights alone without my kids, and I've really tried to give myself space and sit in those feelings. And I'd say it feels like things are moving, So just wanted to say thank you to the group for giving me the space to talk about that stuff. I don't think I'm out of the woods by any means, but it was, it's just been nice to have this space. The topic today I think is really prescient, and just there's been all these signs in my life about like, your attention essentially defines who you are, like what you pay attention to, and we live in this world where everything is vying for it, right? You all know, social media, TV, sports, everything. It's just like it's a competition for our attention. And so many of us, I think, are sleepwalking through life because we're just looking at whatever shiny object gets put in front of us. And so I feel this call to build something. As a software developer, I like to build things. I'm an engineer. I've always loved to build things, Legos, building software, building with my hands even. So, and I have some side projects that I really want to start to see if I can, with the power of AI these days, I can do so much more than what I could do even 2 years ago on my own. So I'm really just trying to what can I peel off? Like, well, I think I have a group of high functioning people here, and it's like, well, how do I put away the bullshit that I don't need to do and focus on the thing that I actually want to do? Because I'm the kind of guy where it's like, well, before I do that, I got to do the dishes. Before I do that, I got to make sure all the laundry's done. Before I do that, I got to make sure all the groceries are bought. And then once I get all these things done, once I feel like I've achieved order in my life, then I can go and do the things that are, quote, I'm passionate about or important to me. But then I often don't. By the end of the day, I'm exhausted, or I don't have the bandwidth. And so I'm just like, how do I sharpen my blade of attention so that I do make time to build the things I want to build.
Yeah, I mean, I have tons of thoughts and feelings, but we're gonna let the whole deal. This is supposed to work. I would love for you guys to give Adam some feedback, so that I don't just
and honestly,
dive in.
Liz's situation came to mind as someone who's like established career, pivoting to something new, and like children.
Yeah.
I'm just like, well, Liz is doing it. So how you doing it, Liz?
I'm not sure I'm doing it with low anxiety or without a great deal of overwhelm, but no, I'm smiling at what you shared, because if I were to share today, it would be exactly that, just a little bit different of what I'm trying. So, I work in corporate. I still have my job, which
Me too.
can be
Yep.
very demanding, depending on, I go through some waves throughout the year, but then I really always have had a huge interest in design. And so it's been such a wild journey for me over the last year, because I keep getting these little design projects, and some are little and some are not. I'm doing an edition right now, but that are presenting themselves to me, and I am very much finding this great divide that I'm working through right now. And it's similar to what you say too, because it's so hard for me to figure out where to put my attention, because I have 1,000 things pulling my attention. There's days I feel like I have 3 jobs between my kids, the design work, and then my current job, my day job. And there's a lot of heaviness even when I talk about it, because it's just absolutely a lot. Sometimes I wonder, am I gripping on to something? Well, I know actually the answer to this, but I feel like I have such a tight grip on something that feels safe and feels like the known, what I'm used to, what I've been doing for 15 years. I have such a tight grip on that it tends to suck a lot of my energy, where I actually really love and enjoy is doing the design work, but I don't give myself a lot of time to do it. So there's a lot of split focus there. And man, I think if you can just give yourself those little nuggets of time throughout the day to do something you really enjoy, uh, it is amazing how much lighter and freer that part of myself feels when I allow myself to dive into that and to do that and spend time in that, versus this known path, this predictable path that keeps sucking so much of my time and energy. So, yeah, I wish I had the answer and how to do it. I'm very much in the struggle of it, but it is nice to feel good on those times that I do give myself the opportunity to dabble in the design work.
Thank you for that. Yeah, I know no one has the answers, and it's just like you said, finding even starting. I think is but once
Yeah.
we just get through I just need to start, right, and then I think it'll kindle the flame and start to burn, right? Like I want to just keep going. So I truly think
And if it makes you feel any
I
better,
just
I
need to
talked to
say
Matt for
I
about
just need to
five
commit to
years
starting.
prior to starting. So it wasn't an easy
Yeah.
thing for me to just start, either, or just to do it, even if it was just something small.
Yeah. So there's no shortage of actual work in my corporate career where it's like, that's where I think I'm mentally struggling with. It's like, well, I should be doing what's on my current assignment board, or, should I be focusing on my side projects? And there has to be a line in the sand somewhere where I say, I've done enough to earn my paycheck. Now it's time to go do the thing I want to do, right? Like,
Hmm.
and so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Adam,
Any?
oh,
Oh, go
Yeah,
ahead.
please. Hit me,
um,
coach.
Co. Adam, I went through divorce too. My kids were, I think, 9 and 12, um, and so that managing some of that, the weeks that it was similar with my ex, where I had them for a week, and then for a week I was on my own, sort of. Um, I've been remarried for 10 years,
Mhm.
but yeah, there's, if there's any kind of support I can provide, as we do these things, I will, because it was an interesting season to navigate. But regarding the, like, I connect with your situation, Liz. Like, how do you carve out time? And for whatever reason, the mornings, Adam, like I've the two pieces that I've had to lean into in order to feel productive is, what are the things that I just need to keep doing, right? No matter what the emotional resistance is. Matt knows some of the stories with practice and my instruments, but it's really annoying being a musician. You got to practice all the fucking time, right? Like, if you're going to stay good at it, right? Hours. And so I just wake up early, and 2 hours of whatever, right? 2 3 hours, 5 days a week, and it just, and there's not a lot of like emotional depth to it. It's just, but in the morning it feels sacred in the sense of no one's vying for my attention, right? Even when the kids were younger, I'd wake up like at 4:30, right, just to get in like some of those things, like how some would go to the gym early or whatever before their kids wake up. So I don't know. Morning has been kind of a useful way of um, prioritizing certain things that just have to get done. And then the other piece, I know, Matt, you have a flow structure, but I sometimes talk with people about like finding your flow path and recognizing what you need, the physical space, the time, whatever, to feel like you can be fully creative. And I've just, sometimes being clear about that allows me to navigate my day. So like, if I've got a half hour, there's only certain things I have emotional access to. But if you give me 3 hours, that's a completely different situation for creativity, and just recognizing where it's unique for me in terms of those needs.
Yeah, I've had Thank you for that, and thank you for the reminder. Because when I was going through the divorce, my ex and I, we still get along really well. We were cohabitating, and I would wake up at 5 a.m. and do the things I needed to do to fill my cup. That would be like workout, some meditation. I also
Yeah.
play some instruments as well, so it would just be like 45-minute workout, 15 minutes of piano, 30 minutes of meditation, and just like fill my cup up. And then like the rest of the day, I wouldn't have like that anxiety of like, oh, when am I gonna work out? When am I gonna get my guitar practice in? And I somewhere along the line, I just lost that ability to wake up at 5 a.m. I was never been a morning guy, but it was, I think, when the divorce finally happened, a lot of emotional stuff kind of came out, and then I was just like, what, like not totally sleepwalking through life again, but just haven't really had that more like that feeling of relief, like it's over, and I can maybe I was like, I can rest now, right, or I can breathe. So thank you for the reminder of like, it felt so good when I was just like would have that morning time to do the sacred things that I wanted to do, and maybe I can experiment with getting back to that.
There's a different challenge when you're working through that like divorce stuff. I'm glad you have a good relationship with your ex. I did not have that kind of situation, so there's a lot of heaviness, and being able to show up emotionally for my kids in the way I needed to was a challenge. And but that eventually changes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for that. Be curious to hear more about Matthew's flow state. I took your quiz, Matt. I took your flow quiz, so I got the results. Said something about $175 for an hour consultation.
So I'll let Scott, if you have any feedback for Adam, and then I'll jump in after that. And if not, that's okay. But
I guess, Adam, you know, the one thing that, you know, I've kind of heard and seen and utilized, I haven't had a whole lot of creative time. I just, you know, that's something that I've kind of put on hold. I'm trying to develop, but, you know, there are a number of people. Stephen Pressfield's an author that I follow pretty closely. He's written a lot of books, and you know, and everything I see from him with other authors and creative people is, you know, you gotta put the time in. I mean, put a time on the calendar, and you can't wait till you're gonna feel like it. And if it's from 7 to 8 in the morning, you're gonna sit from 7 to 8 in the morning, and you're gonna work on something, right? It may be crap, you know. He's written pages and pages and pages and pages and pages that weren't any good, but that's the time when I'm going to focus on this. And you know, Christopher mentioned, you know, sometimes he has these blocks of 30 minutes or 3 hours. For me, if I have a block of 3 hours, that to me is overwhelming, right? I wouldn't know where to start. It's too much, and that's when I'm going to start to find things to distract me. So for me, breaking things up into smaller chunks helps, and it makes me feel like I can get started on something. And I think the other thing you mentioned with AI, you know, I'm not great with a blank sheet, but with a few prompts from AI, it's like, what could I work on today? Or here's what I'm trying to do. And at least it gets the juices flowing, and I'm a little more functional from that perspective. So that's just kind of some thoughts and what works for me.
Yeah, thank you. What was the name of the author you mentioned?
Stephen Pressfield.
Just like it sounds.
He's written. Yes,
Pressfield?
yeah,
Okay.
he wrote one of the books that I really like of his is the art. I think it's either the Art of War or the War of Art. I mean, there's the one that's kind of the famous battle one, but this one is more about creatives and talk. And there's a great audio book where he reads it. He reads it himself. But it's just very open. I mean, he had a very interesting life leading up to being successful. He wrote The Legend of Bagger Vance. He's written a number of novels about, Thermopylae and all these kind of crusades and wars and things. But there it is. Yeah. Yep. So I like him. And in one of these days when I'm able to open up some creative space, I'm going to follow some of the stuff he does. So.
Thank you all. Thank you all for the feedback.
I think this is perfect though, because I think this is like, you know, again, you, and you know, I can make it relevant for all y'all, right? And you're all in sort of like different stages. And when I say stages, I never want to make it sound linear. It's not, oh, he's here, she's here, he's here. You're just in different like kind of components of this in terms of like where focus and kind of lies, right? Like, Chris has been a creative for a very long time, right? He's been doing this, straddling different careers at the same time, doing a lot of, his church music ministry stuff while he's playing music. There's, the time in his life where he was touring, before, even any of that started. Like, so, I think, Chris, you actually have a lot of really cool wisdom around, sort of like creativity and structure and, all of that. As Liz mentioned, this has been sort of something that she's worked on for a while of like, okay, how do we start shifting these things? And whether she likes it or not, she has a lot because, the past state was all corporate, no time for any of this stuff. And, that's been slowly shifting over time. And, I think, Scott, you've been open, like, retirement's coming and like, not that you haven't done any of that, but I think you were honest. I'm just trying to reflect back what you said of like, I haven't given myself a lot of time for that, like, you tend like that extra time you tend to use a little differently. And neither it's bad nor good, but you see the sort of the writing on the wall, as it were, of like, yeah, I'm gonna have some time. So it's going to be interesting to figure that out. And meanwhile, Adam, maybe you're at a tipping point now, or you're beginning to be at a tipping point where you want to take some of that extra time. And my sense would be it's just this kind of like phased approach where there's still probably a fair amount of time that's being eaten up by some of the emotional, sort of the grief and the change and all of that. But as you go along, there may be more and more time, that you have. I have so much to say on this that I don't, like, I'm going to give you nuggets because I can't possibly give you everything I would want to give you. I think most of you know, growing up with ADHD, like, focus has sort of been a theme of my whole life. Like, how do we focus? Why do we focus? What do we do with focus? And as tempting as it would be to kind of put out my shingle and say, hey, I'm the focus guy, I don't find that work to necessarily be the sort of like the best container for all of it, because I think that there's so much nuance to all of this. I think probably, Adam, it's good to start out with some of the practicals, and I think you got a couple of good practicals, right? Time blocking, waking up in the morning, all of those things I think are really good and important. I tend to see it in two different ways. There's like one way you can do it, which is like you have a pretty good sense of where you want to end up with, whether it's one specific project or like bigger life picture in 5 years. And so I'll sit down, I'll try to formulate that structure, and then I'll work backwards. And I'll go, okay, how do I take this big thing that I like, I want to have this app built and, insert arbitrary amount of time here, 3 years. Like, okay, cool. How do I, and you can do it with AI. Like, I'm going to have this strategic planning conversation, and then we're going to break it up into small chunks, and I'm going to be identifying what phases those chunks come in. I mean, you do planning, you know how that works, Adam. So that's kind of one way to do it. And then the other way to do it is to just kind of do it more organically, which is more the like, I'm just going to clear the space and see what shows up in that space. And I'm just going to like dabble. I'm going to write a draft. I'm going to try this. I'm going to try that. And I'm not saying it has to be one or the other. Different people tend to feel better about one way or the other. I employ a combination, and I think it depends on the project and it depends on the thing. But I'm definitely somebody where, like, if you give me 2 or 3 free hours, I have this backlog of like, projects that I'm working on, right? And if you say take an hour, maybe I take one of those projects, but like that's like who I am, right? So I care a lot about, those creative projects and finding ways to do them. I think the less practical thing to say that I want to sort of back up for everybody, and then this is more of a seed planted, and I think, this may be a conversation worth revisiting next week, is that our current state of focus is determined by certain programming that says you need to do X to feel safe, or you need to do Y because you said you would, or you need to do Z because that's the right thing to do. And what I find is very helpful is taking some of that deeper work rather than just I need to get this project done, but going like, yeah, but why does my attention keep coming back here or here, right? What's going on for me? And I think it's less appealing than we'll just wake up 2 hours early because it's more way more complex. But I find it to be helpful longer term. And what that is like, okay, if I notice there are places I keep getting sucked back to that I don't want to be, why? What is it that keeps sucking my energy back here? Is there a fear? Is there a belief? Is there an obligation? Right? And what do I need to do to work through some of that so that I don't have to keep trying to get the car up the hill with the concrete block on the back? Right? It's a lot easier to drive that car when something isn't continuing to force it backwards. And so I say that because I think it's so important to save people time and energy if I can, right? Like I just see so many people burning out their gas on project, but their focus is being reshifted back to these old places. So that's sort of the deeper thing that I would look at for any of you, for all of you, like when we're talking about focus, is where do I keep getting funneled back in, and why? And then there's rabbit holes to each of those, but I'm just going to bring you back to what we've been working on. But that's where the emotional digestion comes. Like, don't make it fancy. You can make it fancy if you'd like, but I keep going back here. Okay, hang on, clear at 20 minutes, half an hour. Like, just want you to sit with that, right? I want you to sit with the feelings underneath. I have to do this, or I should be doing that. And you can find some pretty interesting places that it takes you, some interesting beliefs, some interesting fears. To bounce back to being a little practical for Adam, and then we can kind of see if there's any final thoughts or comments here, and then we can close down. I love this concept, and I'm sure I've shared it with most of you before, that genius isn't necessarily something we produce, it's something we receive. It's from sort of this, it's a Greek idea that everybody has a genius, that there's a Scott genius, a Liz genius, a Christopher genius, an Adam genius up there, and sort of Plato's ideal world or whatever. And it's more about creating the ideal conditions to receive that genius versus we're culturally conditioned to produce genius in the same way that we're it's a post-industrial revolution model, blah blah blah, right? And I find that overall perspective makes a big difference in creating things, because there's a lot more forcing and there's a lot more structuring and a lot more heaviness around that sort of like mechanical approach to creativity versus what I would kind of call a more organic approach to creativity, which is like this thing wants to take on a life of its own, or these things, or I may not even know the things yet, I may not even be able to identify them as characters or ideas, but they're sort of like bubbling up within me, and I want to nurture that seed. I want to like water that, right? I want to give it sunlight rather than needing to define it and put it in a box and make it happen. That sort of like pre-work is just as valuable, if not more valuable. I can't see what's coming above the ground yet, but I'm going to water it, and I'm going to tend to it, and I'm going to make sure the soil is what it needs to be so that thing can sort of grow itself. Because if we're using the old paradigm to approach the new work, then we're just going to get sucked back into some of those same fears and beliefs that got us in the situation in the first place that we didn't necessarily love. So does that last part make any sense, Adam, or do I just sound insane?
No, it's good. Really resonates. I do think I need to kind of look behind the reasons why I feel I need to focus on maybe things that aren't the immediate priority. Because I do think there's some fears and beliefs in there that, make me I don't know. I'll have to work on it. See what comes up.
Yeah. Glad that resonates. So I'm noticing the time. I'm going to kind of close this down here. And I try to make these things broad on purpose because this is just universally applicable, right? Like whether we're talking about work projects, whether we're talking about relationships, whether we're talking about, sort of any of the way that we're spending our time and our energy, our focus has these hidden rules to it. I need to be this person. I need to do it this way. I need to show up like this. And I'll tie this up because I'll sort of end it where I started. When I was a little kid with ADHD and everybody was just yelling at me to focus, like nobody ever had an answer of like, how do you focus? Well, I just sit down and do it. But that's not like, you haven't really answered the question. And so to answer the question, I've been on this, journey my whole life. It's like, oh, like what I focused on depended on what I was feeling. And so instead of just forcing myself to focus, what I've learned to do is build out my life with the feelings of things that feel naturally compelling, right? What do I like to do? Talk to people all day. Cool. I'm going to fill my calendar, right? Talking to people. Like, why would I not? That would be insane because then I don't have to try to focus anymore. It's not a battle. So, and again, I'm not saying that, well, it's just that easy at all. But what I'm saying is that so many of us have a schedule and a set of focuses, foci, that octopuses, I don't know, that a schedule that is more necessity than joy, is more, forcing than flow, or is too, if it's not more, then it's too much. And I know personally, and I know from all of the people that I worked with, it just doesn't have to be that way. Those are, so much of that is based on old agreements that we made when we were younger, and I personally don't want an 18-year-old writing my strategic plan because he doesn't know what he's doing, right? He still thinks he has to make his mom happy to be okay. And he doesn't. That doesn't influence his okayness. So as you're thinking about focus, and I think I do kind of want to continue the conversation, but I'm going to think of a specific sort of way to deepen it. And I want you to think about, what am I telling myself I need to focus on that's eating up space, that maybe I need to challenge some fears or beliefs around? And then just the other side is, what am I naturally compelled, into, that's calling me, that I don't need to like make it done tomorrow. I just need to like, give it little pieces and little bits of space and allow it to grow and allow it to mature, like a tree. Right. So, you guys know me enough to know I'll keep coming back to sort of the dichotomy between the sort of mechanical sense of focus and a more organic sense of focus. And it's not that there aren't mechanical pieces that may be helpful. It's just that they may not be sustainably helpful because, Adam, you made a perfect point. It's like, I wasn't just starting this routine. Like, I had this routine nailed. Like, I was doing the morning wake ups, like not kinda, like 100% say. And then this thing came, right? And then these changes happened. And so the issue isn't discipline. The issue is that, that things change, that life is organic, that one season calls for certain things and another season calls for other things. And what we don't want to do is stay so attached to the old seasons that we don't create the space necessary for the new things to emerge. And we also don't want to rush the emergence of those things. We want to clear little bits of time that allow those things to grow and continue to develop. And maybe we don't have to force it. Maybe we can steward it or open space for it, maybe guide it at times, but we don't need to, that it wants to be, I'm sorry for the language, but like it wants to be born. These ideas, these things, these different aspects of your life. And this could be a relationship, or it could be a project, or it could be, a variety of things. But like the idea that we have to make it, and that's just, yeah, we don't. We don't. So, hope that's helpful. I really appreciate you guys as we get into the flow, you guys being able to provide each other more and more sort of feedback and relate more and more to these things. That's really the goal of this. Like, I can talk for hours. That's not what we're here for. We're here to, create this shared space where we can connect around these challenges. So I appreciate you all so much, and I'm glad you're here. And I will look forward to seeing everybody who can make it next week back at the campfire.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week.
Bye.